Yeah, it's always been about the relationships. You have a spider web of relationships to manage. You have your owners, your stakeholders, you have your vendors, your suppliers, you have your internal teams, whether it's leasing, maintenance, accounting, and
Have you been thinking about buying your first rental property for some time, or do you already own a bunch of properties? Well, fellow investors, you found the right location to listen and learn from others' successes. Welcome to The Very Real Estate Effect with your host, Axel Mont-Saint-Jean.
Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing right here in Quebec. And today, it's a pleasure and an honor to have my friend Cory Friedman, the Vice President of Lemire Property Management, join us for the show. Hi, Cory.
Hey, Axel, thanks a lot for having me. Very excited to have a great discussion.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to have you here today. You bring a vast knowledge of the real estate market and obviously of the property management business that you lead. So before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone, please share this episode with a friend who could benefit from this conversation. Cory has a lot of experience in property management and other real estate investing sides. So stay tuned, share this episode, leave us some questions and some comments. I try to respond to everything we get. Now, Cory, you don't just start being at the head of 3,500 units under management. So how did it all start?
Like most things in life, it's an evolution, right? So my background's actually in accounting. I'm a CPA, practiced accounting, tax, audit, consulting for many, many years, and actually transitioned out of accounting into the property management space. It was really a family-run business. So I come from 3 generations, believe it or not, of real estate owners, operators, and actually accountants. So dating back to the 60s and 70s, it was my grandfather who came to Canada from Europe and started investing in, you know it, residential multifamily real estate. So a duplex here, 4 units here, 6 units there. And as the story goes, 6 turns to 10, 10 turns to 20, 20 turns to 60, 60 turns to 150. And lo and behold, you have 3,500 doors that you're looking after. So that's basically my upbringing. And going through that, you experience a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the relentless nature of, operating rental properties.
And over time, you have to build a thick skin because property management isn't always easy, depending on the clientele that you deal with. And I like that you bring us back a little bit about how it started with your grandfather buying a few properties. And you're right, at some point as a real estate investor, once you reach a certain point, you ask yourself, hey, what am I going to do about the property management? Do I keep it in-house? Do I outsource it? And so on. So then I take that your grandfather chose to keep it inside, and then that was literally a business that now you've been operating for 3 generations. Now, coming from an accounting background, that must be very interesting for you because the property management, yes, has different facets, and we'll get into it a bit later about what's in the office, what's on site, and all this. But like you have, first, can you describe the portfolio that you have in terms of assets?
Yeah, for sure. So we're basically spread across the board, all over the city in different neighborhoods, as well as different asset classes. And I'll just back it up a little bit, just to give the lay of the land that, we don't own all 3,500 doors. We do property management for other owners, so fee-based or third-party management, as well as acquisitions and putting deals together of our own, and we manage our own assets. But like I said at the start, this started by, buying smaller plexes where, the goal was to, retrofit or improve or, increase the NOI of these properties. So, your B, your C class assets. And more recently, over the last couple of years, we've been getting more and more involved with new construction developers in multifamily. So we're talking about prime A class assets. These are these built to rent multifamily rentals where, the rents are high, but the resident expectations are even higher. So you really have a lay of the land from all around the city. I mean, thinking from, the South Shore all the way to the West Island, and all different types of renter profiles, right? So you have your grimy $600 3.5s to your $2,200 3.5. So it's with that scale that you have the opportunity to see all the intricacies and all the nuances. I really feel that a property is like a person. It has its own DNA. It has its own characteristic. It has its own strength, weakness, right? So it's not like one size fits all the time. But there are ways where you can systemize and you could, make sure that your processes are in a place to succeed in all these different cases.
And I'd love to hear also a little bit about the owner profiles, because I'm sure you have some of them that own a sixplex, if you even take still that unit size, and then that, some 24, some 32s, and so on and so forth. And depending on the type and the size of the asset, some want to be more or less involved. I take it you have some that are local that still want to be, a little bit active, and you probably have some that are overseas and that just want to know like twice a year, where is it at, and just see the numbers and that's it. So how do you manage the expectations of such a diverse clientele base?
It's a great question. And the truth is we have all types of owners. We have owners that, sometimes might not even remember that they own the building because they get their annual statement, they get their quarterly distributions, and, c'est la vie, right? And then you have other owners where these are the assets that are going to be the retirement fund for their families or their legacy or their wealth for generations to come. And they want to be involved in every decision. Every check needs to get signed. Every renovation needs to be evaluated. Every service contract needs to be vetted. So, it's kind of one of those things where it's about relationship, about building trust. And what we see is that the people that want to be micro and want to be heavily involved, it just takes time to build a rapport, to build trust, to get into the groove of how often are you meeting, how often are they getting implicated. And what I've seen is that over time, we earn the trust by being professional, by being honest, and by being responsible, and by performing. And that's how you kind of get the autonomy and the freedom to make moves. And really, our philosophy is we manage the building as if we own the building, regardless of who is on the deed, who's on the mortgage, right? We make decisions that we would make for our own portfolio. Mm-hmm. And that's been our selling point, and it's really been our philosophy and our DNA.
And that's really the best approach. Like as a property owner myself, I like to hear this because sometimes we have to make decisions of, we would need to replace this and this and that, but is now the right time? Maybe we should wait a year or two, and then vice versa. Sometimes we could wait a year or two, but how about we just do it now instead? And every owner goes through those decisions. So this kind of leads to, being guided by an operator like yourself who also has a bird's eye view on the market. And this is now where I want to kind of pivot the conversation, because very earlier on in my real estate investing career, someone had told me you should go talk to big property owners because they're the first ones to know when an owner is tired of a property and he wants to sell. So if you're friends with them, they'll send you deals. Now, it doesn't always happen that way, but you have such a good pulse on the market. And the last few years have been, a challenge. We've gone through a bit of an expansion and a bit of a bust. What have you seen lately in terms of evolution that came out of the last, I was going to say post-pandemic?
Yeah, there's just been a big slowdown on volume, as anyone can see based on just the transaction level. I think what happened was that there was a decade or 15-year period of whoever was at the plate could not miss, right? Whatever you bought, you succeeded. Whether it was a good deal, whether you were a good or bad operator, it didn't matter because you had serious appreciation in the market across all different boroughs. You had intense gentrification in areas like, Saint Henri and LaSalle and Verdun, and where, these were nothing 20 years ago. And now these are booming, where you're getting almost $3 a foot on the rentals, right? So you couldn't miss. And in the last couple of years now, buyers are having a lot harder time finding that right price point that makes sense because of the cost of capital, right? Your financing, your debt service cost has gotten so high that at the end of the day, it's harder to put together deals with sellers who have expectations of the highest price and think that we're back in 2018 or 2019, and the numbers don't make sense. And it kind of comes back to, I'm the CPA. At the end of the day, the numbers are going to drive your decision making, right? You need cash flow, you need a certain target of NOI, right? Like at the end of the day, yes, in the long run, time and gravity, as I call it, real estate gravity will do its thing.
Yeah, and it forgives a little bit.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, if you have a really long-term vision, which I think that you should, right? And I am naive or I'm biased because I come from a third generation of property owners where I see what happens when you hold real estate for generations. But the last couple of years, the numbers haven't made sense at the prices that sellers are expecting. So that's been the key thing that we're seeing. Obviously, last couple months, rates have been dropping. Deals have been happening. You're seeing, and you said the big players, you're seeing that the REITs are reshuffling, right? They're selling assets where they've made their nut. They're buying new assets where they want to restart. So you always see from the top level, the REITs are going to move, and then the high level operators are going to move. And then, as it goes down the food chain, there's going to be more and more transactions for, the average real estate investor and the everyday investor.
And it's interesting that you described the, obviously the market squeeze that we saw because deals didn't make as much sense given the high price of money and financing. Now, I was going to say property management kind of being considered a bit, sorry to say, but at the end of the food chain, you also must have gotten squeezed, or maybe some operators, some owners tried to renegotiate with you or lower your fees. Like what did you see that trickled down back to your operation?
It's funny because we didn't see what you would think would be the natural trend based on the market.
Good.
What we actually saw was people started to realize how hard of a business the operations are, right? For 15 years, whether you were good, bad, organized or not, you were able to succeed. Your rents were up, your expenses were fine. As the expenses increased, especially in taxes, insurance, labor, materials, all of a sudden people started scratching their head and realizing, oh my God, this is a headache to run these buildings. I was doing it on the side and now things are taking more stress, more time. And people have been coming to the third-party management companies and saying, hey, how much will you charge me to take my headache away? Yeah. Right? I already lost all my hair. Why don't let my clients keep their hair? Right? Like this is what we've seen over the last couple of years is that, and it's what we've known for our whole life. This business is hard, right? It's 24/7. It's relentless. You have residents that you have investments, but that's their home, right? And when something goes bad at your home, it's dramatic. It's tragic. You want transparency, accountability, responsiveness. So there's a lot of responsibility that is taken on by the third-party manager. And I think in the last several years, due to the market conditions, we've actually been highlighted as this more needed than ever. Yeah. Which has been obviously amazing for our business, but comes with its fair share of challenges, of course.
Yeah, and it's good that owners have been able to identify you as a pillar for them and to rely on you, and that's a testament to how serious and how well you run your operation, and also from the market, because as you said, like this is for the owner, it's an investment, but for the clients, for the tenants, this is where they live, and I've always had a real estate investing style that's been very respectful of tenants. I think it's very important, and it's sad to see that the industry sometimes has a bad name because of a few bad apples, and how crucial good property management is.
Yeah, it's always been about the relationships. You have a spider web of relationships to manage. You have your owners, your stakeholders, you have your vendors, your suppliers, you have your internal teams, whether it's leasing, maintenance, accounting, and like you said, you have your residents, you have your tenants, you have the people that are driving the performance of your properties by paying rent on time and paying a good rental price for the unit. And it has to be about respect. It has to be about accountability across all levels, right? You need to be held accountable by your residents. You need to keep your vendors accountable for the work that they're going to do. In return, you have to treat them properly. You have to service the residents. You have to try your best to hear out and to have methods where you can receive service requests or information, right? You have to pay your vendors on time, right? So that they can be reliable for you. And really, like, you see a lot of bad articles in the news about the renovictions and the way that landlords have been, more cowboy than others to try and really drive, financial specs or take out financing or whatnot. And we're very transparent up front. We do not do that, right? We're in it for a long time. They say, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. We're here for a long time and a good time. I promise you that. But we're here for long, sustainable, organic growth of value, right? We're going to turn over the units as they turn over naturally. Yes, we're going to, if it's your desire to have a certain financial compensation for residents, we're going to do it in a trustworthy and respectful way. We're not going to drive people out or force people out. That's never been our mandate, and it will not be our mandate, because that's just not how we operate. It's not how we treat people within our ecosystem.
No, it's not good business practice. It's great that you don't participate. Now, when it comes to the property management, there is, you had broken it down for me in kind of like two ways of like what's on site and what's in front of my computer. And I'd like to kind of go over that, because part of some of our listeners are growing and scaling their portfolio, and I really want you to be able to share your knowledge in terms of what does it take to run a property. And I just want to take a basic example of, let's say, a 10 unit in Hochelaga Maison. Okay, out of the blue, I think a lot of people who listen can identify. Now, there's the operation and the administration.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you categorize under each one?
So very simple. You have operations and admin. And I call this, you could also call it, you have inside and outside, right? So anything outside is operations, right? This is on-site. This is leasing, maintenance, vendors, preventative, tenants, interactions, right? Anything that physically happens at your building or on the road to the building. And then you have administration, which is the inside, which is basically anything that you could do on your computer, right? So this is paperwork, accounting, bookkeeping, receivables, payables, right? Reporting, legal, financing, tech, right? So I really have a core summary of, you need to master both elements to be able to drive the efficiency and the scale that you want. But taking a step back for a 10-unit property, it's very simple. You've prioritized your leasing, your turnover, your renewals, your collections, right? Make sure that your bookkeeping is up to date, whether you're using QuickBooks or another tool, or you're just using a spreadsheet, right, to do your bank write-ups. But it's very important for you to understand that the decisions you make on the outside, how does that impact your bank account and your financial statements or your cash flow or whatever it is on the inside. And it's this cool cycle where it's like, hey, my information that I find on the inside, right, my accounting stuff, is going to drive my decisions that I'm going to do on the outside. And then those decisions are hopefully going to send new information that I'm going to regurgitate or see through my financial reporting, and the cycle will continue, right? So it's this feedback loop of saying, hey, I need the inside and the outside to be in sync so that I'm cohesive, so that I have a full picture, so that I have a bird's eye view of, hey, when I'm doing A, B, and C, this is what the cost is, this is what the impact is, and this is where we can then move forward.
Yeah. And this is where the beauty of having a good system in place, well organized, comes into play, especially when you have to, because we're just now talking about 110 unit, but for people who have 3 different properties at 3 different addresses, then how do you go about that? And then also, that's the moment at the end of the year where I like reading the story on the financial statements and just looking at property per property, and then looking at, okay, how much vacancy did we have? Well, okay, we have the normal operating expenses, but was there some unforeseen, and how did that come about? What does that say about the preventive maintenance that we should be looking at for next year? And so it's amazing the story that you can get from looking at your cash flow statement.
The numbers never lie.
Yeah.
It's tried and true, regardless of what business you're in, whether you're in manufacturing, service industry, medical, healthcare, especially in real estate. The numbers never lie. They're going to drive the story, as you said. And, when you have one property or one address or two addresses, you can muscle through with blood, sweat, and tears with minimal organization because there's a finite amount of effort that is required. And I look at the scale as you get more doors, as you get more addresses, as you're in geographically more areas, there's like a shift between effort and organization, right? You can work harder at the start, but as soon as you reach this tipping point, you now need to start working smarter because you're only one person or you're only two people or a limited number of people. And there's only 24 hours in a day. And there's only so much, like we call it like little brain damage, right? Yeah. All of these issues and fires and whatnot, there's only so much brain damage that you could take. So you need to find ways that if you're going to scale and grow your portfolio, you need to leverage organization tactics or systems, right? Yeah. You need systems and systems, they can come in many shapes and ways. And I'm sure that we'll dive in a little bit into that. But really, like if you think about this scale, as you get more doors, it's less about effort and more about organization or system.
That's a very, I like what you said about the trade-off between, what was it?
Effort and organization.
Effort and organization. That's such a good way to put it. You're absolutely dead spot on. Yeah. And obviously, you can do it with one property, two properties. Once you grow, and I can just imagine at 3,500 units, you need to be super well organized. Otherwise, it just doesn't work and it's a headache. So as you scale, the importance of process and systems is absolutely crucial.
It's all about avoiding the slippage through the cracks, right? There are so many little things that happen in real estate, right? Renewals, move-outs, leasing, collections, payables, bank recs, right? There's so many little tasks. And the thing about it is that it repeats every month. Yeah. Whether you're ready for it or not, first of the month, rent is due, right? You got to be ready to run your first of the month procedures, your middle of the month procedures, your end of the month procedures. So as you scale, it becomes so much easier to have these little slips, little misses. And, it might not seem big at the moment, but it's like all these little things, they add up. And at the end of the year, when you're looking at your statement and you're saying, well, how did we miss our targets, right? And then you think back, well, we had slippage here and missing there, and this fell under wraps, and we mishandled this small situation, and we let this tenant off the hook, and this, we didn't know that we had a move out here, and we didn't clean. All these things add up. Yeah. And the flip side of it, if you can control and take over those little situations and have the systems and have the organization in progress, it's the opposite effect. You're looking at the end of the year and you're saying, we beat our targets here and we succeeded and we did right by our stakeholders, or we did right by our properties because we had this system of accountability.
Yeah. And throughout with your accounting background and you being so involved in the company, did you have the proper tools when you started to be able to have that bird-eyed view?
Absolutely not. So no, we were running old school landlord style. It's funny. My grandfather used to run his rent rolls on those 16 column graph papers, right? And he would get the money in and the cash would come in and he would cross it off his list. And, obviously when my dad came in, he modernized, right? But that was 30 years ago, right? So, now I'm the next generation. And that was one of the first things that I saw when I joined the business, coming from, my background in accounting, audit, tax, consulting. I always had the inclination that we were in this very interesting time in terms of financial technology, right?
And transitioning.
And transitioning, exactly. So when I joined Lemire, obviously we were not not leaders in the tech space, to say the least.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement.
Always.
Give it time, and sometimes it's amazing how much can be put in place in a 2-year period for a large business like that can transform the operation.
Yes, but it's all about convincing the predecessor or convincing the stakeholders, right? So many times in real estate, you want to innovate or you want to adopt new technologies, and the resistance is, we've always done it this way.
Exactly.
Or if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Why would we do this? It's working fine now.
Comfort is the enemy of progress, right? Yes, it's great. It's working. The buildings, they were here before you and I were, and they're going to be here long after we're gone, right? But just because it's comfortable doesn't mean you're leaving money on the table or you're leaving juice on the table. That's the reality. There's so many better ways to do a lot of different things now. And the more you stay hesitant or resistant, in the long term, you're going to see that these little sprinkles here and there, they compound, right? Everyone in real estate knows about the effect of compound. So that's the reality.
Very interesting, Cory. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with the property management. You've clearly built a very successful business over time, and it will continue in the future. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Today.
I really appreciate having me on.
As usual, keep researching your market, make some offers. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you.